Good morning. Welcome to Sports at the Speed of Social. I think we can all agree that no industry has been as impacted by the explosion and then the evolution of social media as sports. The way that teams and leagues and athletes are able to interact with fans and sponsors and media has completely transformed this industry. And so we have a great group of gentlemen here today to speak about their experiences with that. Very quickly, I'll just introduce myself too. I'm a senior vice president and partner at Fleischman Hillard. I'm also a member of our FH Sports team. We help a lot of our clients throughout the network bring their sports marketing and communications activities to life. So we work with brands like Visa, BMW, Samsung, Gatorade, and EA Sports, to name a few. Navigate this ever-evolving sports marketing and communications landscape. My previous life, I worked in marketing and communications for the Sacramento Kings, the Professional Bowlers Association, and the University of Kansas Athletics Department. So that's a little bit about me. I'd love to bring our panelists up here, and I'll let them each introduce themselves to you. Welcome.
Thanks, Mitch. I'll get it started since I sat down first. I'm Dan Cordemanch with Major League Soccer. I oversee all the communications at MLS and certainly work closely in the entire marketing mix, which includes social media. And I've been with MLS for 16 out of our 19 seasons.
Matt Janella. I am currently the travel insider for Golf Channel's show Morning Drive. I started at Sports Illustrated for 6 years. I was a photo editor and then director of photography at Golf Digest magazine. Became the travel writer at Golf Digest magazine, and at that time, in 2008, started building the infrastructure of a social media team and sort of a social awareness within the magazines, both Golf Digest and Golf World magazine, and then came to Golf Channel 2 years ago.
I'm Ken Lovell. I am responsible for media development with the PGA Tour, which is a nice catch-all term that means I'm trying to get people to consume more of our stuff all the time. I work in the communications area, also have some responsibility in our editorial programming and in growing our social presence. My background is also in consumer research, and I started out in consumer packaged goods with Procter & Gamble.
Okay, great. So, guys, let's just jump in with a general question for each of you. Let's start with, how has social media benefited your business today? Dan, you can start.
I'll take it first. First of all, it's funny because probably a dozen years ago, we're Major League Soccer, the new kids on the block, an emerging league. We used to talk about, hey, this internet thing, it's really the sports talk radio for us. We have an audience that's young, diverse, and digital, and that's where they're going for their news and information. And it was kind of funny because we're probably about 10 years too early with saying that, now that we have the proliferation of social media. But for us, it's really all about, and I'm sure it's for everybody in the room, but for us, with our consumers and fans, it's about speaking with them in a direct, contextual, and engaging manner. It's that back and forth. We all use Twitter. It's the ultimate customer service tool, and really shaping our audience's opinions and working closely with them to shape what we do.
Throughout this session, I'll probably speak on both behalf my individual brand and as the brand of the Golf Channel. But and in both cases, I think it's very important that, and within the structure of television, that we're constantly engaging the viewers. Not just speaking to them, but obviously listening to them. We're getting a lot of feedback. Going back to my background in magazines, there's millions of dollars spent on focus groups. Today, it's not necessary. For us, I think a focus group is just as much as you're willing to put out and listen. We're integrating a lot of viewer interaction, feedback across all the platforms that all the shows that we put up on the Golf Channel.
In our case, it's a very similar answer. We're lucky enough to work in an industry where people are ridiculously passionate. People love golf, and this gives us a way to have them become more engaged in it. And anything I can do to get more of someone's time or attention is a good thing as far as we're concerned. We try and create one-to-one connections with fans and talk to them directly, and also cultivate that along with our athletes. So use our brand as a way to point people in the direction of the players that they love and the ones they want to engage with. And it also gives us, as Matt said, real insights in immediate. We know immediately when someone is unhappy or happy with something that we have or have not done in terms of how we present the product.
Okay, let's go on the flip side of that, and let's talk about what are the biggest challenges that you faced so far with social media, how it's impacted your business.
What do you guys want to go first? Or?
Ken.
There you go.
The brutal answer is making money at it. In terms of every piece of media, we are very interested in finding a way to monetize the asset. And it's sponsors often think that that's a matter of just, will you tweet this for me? And that doesn't work. Our fans that is unacceptable. It's the best way that I can put that to them, and they let us know that. It's done well at certain levels, and it's done poorly. And one of our challenges has been trying to deal with that. We have some athletes that have done it extremely well. For example, when Ricky Fowler tweets that he's really excited because the new GoPro Hero 4 showed up at his house, you know that he meant that because he really uses the thing, and it doesn't even feel like a product placement of any kind. So finding ways to make that work better. The other is that sometimes our athletes or in the game can say things before they think all the way through them. They've got a finger on the button, so to speak, and we try and help them through that.
I need to expand on that. It's funny, he mentioned athletes, and I'm sure you guys do it too in all the leagues now. We spend as much time during our kind of traditional media training sessions on social media as we do when it comes to traditional media now, and that's a big change for us just over the last 3 to 4 years. But you mentioned athletes, and we all face those challenges, and we go through the specifics with social media with them. But the largest fine in Major League Soccer history, one of our owners for tweeting. So it's not just athletes, it's working closely with all of your constituents. For us, I'll expand a little bit upon, we mentioned monetizing. For us, it's the delicate balance of sponsored content versus organic content, and working closely with your sponsors to make sure that they're putting together programs where they're activating those sponsorships on social media that make sense. And we've had some successes. One of them's a no-brainer for us. We have the AT&T goal of the week. You got a lot of great goals. We're working, every week we do that with social media. Or earlier this year, for the first time ever, we had what we called the Chipotle Homegrown Game. It was part of our all-star experience, similar to what the NBA does with their rookie game. And to purchase tickets, you didn't purchase tickets. You went online, and through social media with Chipotle, you had to register for tickets. They sold out, 20,000 seats, no problem. And Chipotle captured a great number of, a lot of details and data capture and information. So that's probably some of our biggest challenges. And I had to throw out the owner one. I'm not going to say who it is, though.
Matt, what about you?
Yeah, on the heels of the PGA of America basically losing his job because of a tweet and a Facebook post he just made, I think it's important for us, for anybody, to realize that we're all a brand. It's not athlete, it's not owner, it's not president of PGA of America. We're all functioning as brands, and I think it's a good reminder when people make mistakes that how fragile your brand can be. Me, as an individual now, operating as a brand within a brand, it's a constant reminder, and seeing people make mistakes, whether they're athletes, owners, or presidents. It's just a good reminder that some of the best tweets that you might have are the ones you don't send out. Posts on Facebook are, and I've come up with a lot of really good tweets, and they never go out, And I think it's important that the danger is also, going back to your original question, and speaking now more on behalf of the brand of the Golf Channel, is to remember not to put the cart in front of the horse. That feedback is important, and listening is important, but also maintaining a leadership role within your responsibilities of being either a network or a tour or an organization, I think is also important. So you listen, but also remember to keep a balance of how it affects your decisions going forward.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because we run something called Conversation Training Camp for a lot of our clients, and we talk about the headline test. And we always talk about the idea that you should never post something that you wouldn't be comfortable seeing as a headline in the New York Times the next day with your name attached to it and your brand attached to it too. So it's interesting.
May I
yeah,
add
go
one
ahead.
more thing?
Sure.
And I think it's for everybody in the room, certainly it's a bit of a no-brainer, and it blends traditional communications with social media, and it's a challenge I'm sure all of us face, is chasing the rumors that journalists throw out there now. You know, back in the day, it was like, okay, I'm going to have X number of sources before I go with this. Now it's like they hear something from sources with knowledge of the information, often not really with knowledge of the situation or information, and they put it out there. Whether for us, it's English language, Spanish language. We have a team up in Montreal, you know, could be in French. So we are constantly chasing rumors and trying to clarify and almost pivot and change the tone of the conversation, because you know those rumors that they throw out there, all of a sudden, if it's some little blogger and then Grant Wall with Sports Illustrated and 700,000 Twitter followers decides to go with it, you know, it's some massive challenges for us.
That's true. Matt, let's go back to you for a second. Let's talk about, there's a lot being made of the connection between social interaction and ratings. There's a lot of data that comes out around when people interact around something on social, it can actually drive them to tune in. So from a Golf Channel perspective, how are you guys leveraging social to help increase your ratings?
Well, I think obviously promotion, you know, driving people, making people aware. These are, you know, the vast ocean of content exists now across so many platforms. I look at any kind of social promotion as being sort of those flares you send up, letting people and helping people know that this is happening, when it's happening, where it's happening. I think the network's doing a lot of that. But also going back to kind of listening to what people are reacting to, who they're reacting to, putting those people in more prominent roles, replaying things that got good ratings. So I mean, again, it's all that feedback, it's all that listening and reacting. If you're not doing that, you're dead.
Just to add one thing on that, we've been experimenting with ways to use social to push ratings, because obviously trying to go across media platforms is a positive thing for us. This year we worked with directly with Twitter to do some targeted posts through the heat of competition. And what we would do is, if we would have a marquee matchup, because we don't always know what's going to happen, the magic of playing the games is that you know what happens. If we would get a Ricky-Rory matchup, they're both within a stroke of each other, it's coming down, it's 4 o'clock on Sunday afternoon, we would have all the right people in the rooms. So we would have graphics guys and the right social people, we would have the media guys, and we would make sure we're ready to push the button to buy a certain targeted set, because we would try and find people looking at a boring football game that happen to be looking at their Twitter feed and tell them there's this amazing matchup 2 channels down. And as I told the guys at Twitter, I'm looking for a 1/10 of a point. That's all I want. Just give me one more 1/10 of a point, because they all switch channels. And that was one example of something we're trying to do to take advantage opportunistically of the way that the competition gives us things. By the way, much of the time we didn't do anything. If you're not given something that's a marquee matchup, then you let it ride, and you sort of deal with the hand you're dealt. But it's about getting the right kind of art, getting the right kind of tweet, getting the right kind of message, and then being ready to pull the trigger at the right time.
Dan, let's go to you for a second. From a communications perspective, it used to be the playbook was so obvious for everyone. When we had news to break, you know, it was a press release, and we would distribute the press release to all the media we knew and put it on the wire maybe. Today we have so many channels available to us and so many different ways to lead news. How have you woven social into how the MLS goes out with new news to share with your fans?
Boy, it factors into every decision we make, and I'll give an example. At Major League Soccer, now we're 19 seasons in, we decided recently to change our brand identity. New logo, new marketing campaign for next year, our 20th season, makes a lot of sense. Our former brand identity was straight out of the early 90s when the league started. And when we unveiled that, we went through a process, and social media came first, along with one of our corporate partners at EA. So we did this in September, And it was a tiered process where, yes, we were going to have the press conference, we were going to have the press event and the press release. Of course, you always have to have that. But for us, we first went with EA and their FIFA game, they were launching that day. So clearly we timed it up appropriately to launch our brand identity. And as part of that, they were going to have the new MLS brand identity on the FIFA 2015 game, which was important to us because it goes out to tens of millions of people throughout the world and throughout the United States. So our brand identity actually did not debut at a press conference, did not debut at the press release. It came out on the EA Sports game through Xbox users at 3 a.m. in the morning. That's when they could download it. And from there, we worked with a few different outlets. We'll call them media outlets. One was Mashable, media outlet, social media outlet, call it what you want. The other was SI.com. And we worked with them to give them a sneak peek of everything that we were doing so they could have the story out earlier that morning, even before our website, MLSsoccer.com, which caused some internal friction, as I'm sure you guys have probably experienced, because your website always wants to have it first, and there's a whole different strategy there. So we went with EA, we went with Mashable, we went with SI.com, and we were able to monitor social media and see how the fans were responding. And then, based on those responses, we were able to incorporate that into some of our talking points as we went forward later that morning with our press conference and even the press release, the whole presentation. Later that night, we had a big launch party and everything. But the social media conversation really helped us because when we first put it out there, and you know every time that you have change in something major like a brand identity, there's going to be some negativity. And when it came out early that morning, there was 20% negative feedback, mainly through Facebook and Twitter. And then we incorporated some of that commentary, went through with a formal process of explaining at the press conference, and within 24 hours, it went from 20% to 6% negativity. So we looked at that as a win.
Yeah. Ken, we were talking about this a little bit backstage. Let's talk about when you have new players come into the PGA, how do you discuss social with them? How do you discuss how much you want them to be active, and if so, what are those guardrails that you put in place for them to make sure that they don't get themselves into trouble?
First off, there are no guarantees of people not getting in trouble. I wish there were.
Yeah.
But as you said, we spend a substantial amount of time. We have an entire process we call it rookie orientation, and the guys learn a lot of things really quickly. One of the things we spend time on is media training in general, and we spend just as much time in social. Much of what we spend time on is encouraging them to be social. But then we try and explain the difference between the fact that they are now famous, whether they like it or not, and that they are no longer in a frat with some cool guys. There is a little difference in the way that they ought to talk to the people they know. So we really do three things. One is that fairly formal process, and we give them some good examples of guys that have blown it. We tell them some fun war stories, and then we explain to them some just guardrails, as you said, about places to stay out of. Do this, don't do that, watch out for this. Work with your agent, we're here to help you. And then a second thing that we do is we actually take the agents aside, and we talk to them as well and explain how we can work with them. They're obviously very interested in how we can help them make money, so we use that as a carrot, and we try and keep them involved and engaged. And then finally, we have people one-on-one on the road with our players, and this generally happens in the player dining room, and they will sit down with them and say, okay, guys, what are you doing? How involved do you want to be? What have you done? How do you get involved? And we give them ideas. We will get them actually on social media. My poster child, I mentioned this earlier, was a couple of years ago, Luke Donald, who at that time was moving toward #1 in the world, had no Twitter presence at all, and one of our people sat down with him, grabbed his phone, installed the app, got him a handle, taught him how to tweet, taught him how to retweet, and within 6 months he had 300,000 followers and had learned how to do this. And we look at our brand as a way to push people toward our players. They want to talk to an individual, not necessarily to a logo. So we try and make sure that we do have a brand personality and we have a way that we talk about things. We provide information, but really we're pushing people to have conversations with the athletes that they really want to follow. And we try and use that as a tool to get them involved there. So, but we also, the last thing we do is we try and make sure that we have your basic PR relationship with every one of the outlets that is a big player here. So we talk to Facebook, we talk to Twitter. We want to be at the front end of the trough of things when they come up with new programs. And we also want to make sure we have the phone number that is the right person when something goes up that needs to come down. Or if someone posts something that's fake or if there's a way to get our players involved, they tend to show up and talk to our players as well. And when they develop new things, Facebook's Mentions program, for example, which is designed specifically for athletes and celebrities, they come and set up at our events back with our players and show them how to use it, set them up, and on the fly, combine accounts that shouldn't be there and things like that. So it's really a multi-pronged approach. We try and just make sure that they have all the tools that they need and the information that would be useful for them. And then encourage it.
Yeah. Dan, I think you touched on media a little bit earlier. Matt, I'm curious to hear from your perspective as the resident media member kind of on this panel. How has social changed how you source the stories that you report, how you source the content that goes on, morning drive every day, how you report news out through social?
I learned very quickly as a writer and reporter at Golf Digest that it didn't take a lot to cultivate an inner circle of people who are very willing participants in trying to help me be good at what I do. It's as we were creating tutorials at Golf Digest and Golf World for our various writers and trying to help them understand the benefits of social media, because a lot of them only saw sort of the downside and how they can actually hurt their brand. We were trying to let them know that actually, for me being one person and only one set of eyes and only being able to be one place at one time, to have an inner circle of trusted supporters who were reading local newspapers, watching local broadcasts, for me covering courses, resorts, or avid amateurs, them letting me know, hey, this course is in bankruptcy, or this course is being built. Here's an article. Hey, did you know about this? They start funneling things to you, and just by saying thank you or giving them credit and retweeting what they tweet to you, you start cultivating this group of people, and it makes you be them, right? So you become that group of people, and for me, I can't imagine I'd be here where I am, wherever that is, without them, whoever they are. Yeah. I mean, it's hard to. I would never be able to put a price tag on it, but I think it by doing that and feeding that beast, it gives me a little bit of a leg up on my competition, and it's invaluable.
Dan, from an issues perspective, I think we were talking about this a little bit before. Now when something sparks on social, it's a fine line of when it becomes something you need to react to. So when you've got social listening tools in place and you know that there might be some negative commentary, like you mentioned earlier about that announcement, or there might be an issue bubbling, at what point do you consider, or how do you determine a trigger for, we actually have to participate in this and we have to react to it?
Man, that's one of the biggest challenges I think we all face, because you sit there and you're like, all right, is this going to go away? Or is it really going to bubble up? Is it going to mushroom into something that goes out of control? And when do you address it? Because when you address it with your community, it's going to be amplified. Yep. And part of you thinks, well, boy, it's going to stay local and it's going to go away. So it's tough. We've worked with agencies and their proprietary information and tools. We've Crimson Hexcon, Hootsuite. But I think ultimately for us, it's our internal resources, and it's not easy. But our social media staff, our PR staff, we've got 20 teams with staffs, and they're all monitoring social media to alert us when things happen. If it's, God forbid it happens, but if it's fan violence at a stadium or one of our events, because safety is always first for us. When do we address that? How do we address that? Could it stay local? If there's something that they put up a big banner in a stadium that's offensive, once again, how do we address that, and at what point do we address that? And there's a fine line. Yeah. And you're not going to be 100% correct, but you have to err on the side of, boy, we should address it. Even if you look back and say, maybe we shouldn't have it, it's probably better to address it. So, internal resources for us are the best way, because they know the DNA of our community and they really understand the context of what's happening. But clearly, we use third-party tools and we've used agencies in the past.
let's stick with you for a second. I think one of the things you and I talked about a couple weeks ago is the global nature of soccer and how unique that is. And from a social perspective, how do you communicate with non-English speaking fans, and how are you kind of globalizing the MLS through your social channels?
Yeah, sure. Well, for us, clearly with social media, nearly everything's done in English and Spanish. We do some content in French. Only one of our teams is in a French-speaking city. But that's important to us. And you have to understand the delicate balance, especially of Spanish language media here in the States, and also mainly in Mexico, but throughout Latin America, because there's always that trickle north factor. You know, people who originate from South America or Mexico or Central America are often consuming their content from their home countries. But for us, there's that delicate balance, because our sweet spot is the millennial audience, that 18 to 30, maybe 18 to 34-year-old audience. And for Spanish speakers, the vast majority of those millennials are now consuming the vast majority of their content in English, although they're still consuming in Spanish. So if you look at, print journalists, traditional print journalists in Spanish, they're still, for the most part, engaging in social media in Spanish. Now you go over to the TV personalities, and they're starting to engage a good bit more in English and Spanish, and they have higher Twitter followers, more Twitter followers, more Facebook friends, likes, etc. And that's something that we're monitoring very closely. Then from the global perspective, we're fortunate we have players from nearly 60 different countries. We have a player who's going to join our expansion team in Orlando next year, Kaká. He's a Brazilian player. He has 19 million Twitter followers. Like, if I just get that guy to tweet out something, we're getting pretty good awareness. And then we have other players with 1 million plus, and even a gentleman who used to play in our league, although he's not on Twitter, but he is on Facebook, David Beckham. So whenever we work closely with David and his advisors to get something on his Facebook page, clearly it resonates with a very large audience. So as everybody in the room knows, there's a specific strategy as to how you do that. And then tactics, and often persuading various individuals, because everything that we send to Kaká or David Beckham or Landon Donovan, those individuals or their representatives aren't going to say, yeah, we'd love to tweet that out or put it on our Facebook page. We have to work closely with them to make sure that benefits everyone.
That's 2 Beckham mentions, by the way.
Yeah, well, I wanted to make sure he was paying attention.
Ken, you mentioned Facebook mentions earlier, which is still fairly new. What, as you guys are looking at emerging platforms, or even within existing platforms, the new initiatives that they're trying, what are you exploring that you guys like, or what have you seen success with from a platform standpoint?
In terms of what we're looking at, the answer is yes. I mean,
everything.
Because, and it's, frankly, the real question is what becomes the best tool for the job. Every one of these platforms is good at something, otherwise people wouldn't use it. So we try and make sure that we use it for the best intended purpose. So our fans are really interested. When you're sitting in your office and it's Thursday afternoon or Thursday morning, you really wish that you were at a golf tournament instead. Come on, we all do, right? It's a better place to be, and they want to go there in a way that goes beyond just the competition. They want us to take them behind the scenes. Instagram is ideal for taking people to places that they haven't been. It's picture porn, right? Look, here's a picture from my airplane window, and here's what I just ate. And
I don't know what you're doing on yours.
We just talked about being appropriate.
Exactly. But what we're trying to do is get people behind the scenes and show them things that they otherwise might not have seen. Twitter, on the other hand, we try and leverage that with, we put lasers on every golf hole. You may or may not know that, and we track every shot using a system called ShotLink. And we try and bring statistics into the game, because they can watch the competition. It's on the Golf Channel. We love these guys, right? They can see that, but we want to add something to it. Well, Twitter is a perfect companion that brings that to you. Facebook, on the other hand, is the ultimate. It's very participatory. You ask a question, they will answer it. They'll tell you what you think. So Pinterest is a place that we frankly aren't doing much yet, because it doesn't lend itself perfectly, but we really want to get into that space more. We want to understand there are people that are very interested in what our players wear. That would be an ideal platform for us to take advantage of some of that. Every PGA Tour event, believe it or not, is with very few exceptions, a 501c3 charity, donating all of its proceeds to local area entities, local charities. That is another place where we could take some of that content and put it in those other places. So really, it's not that we want one. We like them all. And at that point, my entire objective is to get you to eat more of our stuff. I just want you to give me 10 hours a week. That's all I ask. And if I can find another way that makes you do that, whether it's on your phone or on your screen or on your television, that's really what we're trying to do.
I'll just add that that is a constant negotiation for me as an individual brand operating within the big brand. being sort of a content generator, being out on the road and trying to figure out, okay, what do I have this pie chart of content. What goes on air? What goes to Instagram? What goes to Twitter? When does it go to those places? What goes Facebook? As an individual brand, I'm constantly trying to figure out, okay, and I'm listening from all three channels to understand, okay, this is a tweet and this is a link within a tweet that tells people this is what I've already generated or what's going to be generated. Given my photography background, I especially love Instagram as sort of my visual breadcrumbs of where I've been and sort of just trickle them out and sort of bring them to eventually what becomes the linkable material on Twitter. I've noticed that anything personal on Instagram gets 25% of the likes that if I put something, related to who I am as a professional. Facebook, it's almost the reverse. If I put something personal, I get 75% more interaction or engagement than if I put something professional. And I'm that's changing constantly, but that's generally what I'm starting to realize now. And it's that constant. Anytime you have something, okay, now where do I put it? When do I put it there? And when do I repeat it? Which is another thing, right? The dirty little secret is nobody sees your tweets, which is really dirty. But then that you got to kind of remember to, and then noticing that Sunday evening, huge spike in engagement, regardless of whatever it is, as opposed to middle of the afternoon on a Tuesday.
Yeah, that channel strategy is so important to make sure that your content is native to each platform, but also so that you're not duplicating across platforms, right? Giving people a reason to follow you on every platform. Matt, let's stick with you for a second. Just talk about how does social impact programming? And particularly, I'm talking about your viewers. To what degree do your viewers impact what goes on the air or what you talk about, what topics you cover?
Hard for me to say because I'm not in programming.
Yeah.
I know it is affecting it, and in a way, I try to ignore that because, you get too bogged down into the feedback of what's going on within the big brand, and it could actually affect sort of how you perform, per se, because, you only want to hear so much about people who have either negative or positive feedback because you want to stay true to who you're supposed to be as on air. They say, be yourself. Except for if they're getting a lot of negative criticism, then we're going to have to shift who you are. But you got to, you do have to stay sort of true to who you are. But more importantly for me, and it's very exciting, and I foresee a future in which you can actually decide who becomes your analyst on the program you're watching, especially for a PGA Tour event. And in a way, it's already happening. You're watching whatever it is you're watching, and you're following your Twitter stream of people you want to get reaction or analysis from. I would imagine at some point I'm just going to be able to put that analysis as a stream across the program that I'm watching and silence the people I don't like hearing. So I'm now producing my own show.
Yeah.
To some extent, we do that now in our apps where we provide it as a companion to the viewing experience so that you can watch and you can add different things, and we also add our own content, which adds statistics and insight, and you can silence or raise all those different things. So we try and enable that as much as possible.
Like, I mean, it's happening.
Dan, we talked about monetizing earlier. I know when I was with the Sacramento Kings, we were always trying to figure out how we could use social to help increase ticket sales. From an MLS perspective, how are your teams using social to leverage ticket sales, sponsorships, those main revenue streams that you count on?
Sure. With ticket sales, I think it's really just about getting creative and leveraging it at the right time. So making sure that you have a unique promotion toward the end of a game that's currently on television and people are watching, and hopefully your team's winning, and you're promoting that because in theory everybody has their second screen and third screen now where they're consuming our content. Yep. In this case, a soccer game. So it's the timing and also the creativity. I'm sure the others have done it, whether it's through Living Social or Groupon or whatever it might be. All of our clubs have done that on a regular basis. When it comes to sponsors, I mentioned, it's a little bit hit and miss, more hits we hope than miss. And I mentioned the AT&T Goal of the Week earlier in the Chipotle homegrown game, but certainly we have other promotions that we work with some of our big corporate partners, such as Continental Tires, has a series of video vignettes that we mainly focus toward our Facebook friends and users, but there are a wide variety of things that we're trying to get creative with to come up with compelling ways to connect with our fan base and do that the right way versus offending them.
Yeah. Let's take a couple minutes just to let each of you talk through some of the stuff that you've been doing that you're excited about or that you have coming up that you're excited about. We've got some screenshots of things. Speak to these or anything else that you're interested in. Dan, let's start with you in the MLS.
All right, I'm going to talk about some of these photos up here, which
All right.
just sprung on me this morning. But fortunately, I was part of all of these things. So actually, the one to the top right is the commissioner of Major League Soccer conducting a Twitter Q&A. It might have been a Reddit a question and answer session, but that was at our All-Star game this past summer in Kansas City, where we have a social media command center. So we're checking out the sentiment, the conversation, and everything the entire weekend of our All-Star game. And then we're doing little things like this, a Q&A with our commissioner. We're bringing in All-Star players for Google Chat sessions and a number of different ways to connect with our fans through social media. So that, and we're fortunate too. These guys that are in our league, they love social media. Got to be careful. We mentioned that earlier, whether it's Snapchat, Instagram, Twitter being the number one. I think about 90% of our players are on Twitter right now. So when we have our special events, they are actively engaged.
Great.
Golf Channel being, a network, and then within that network, a lot of different programs, and then within that network, a lot of different brands and platforms, websites that are springing up. The most recent one is golfadvisor.com. Not like TripAdvisor, this is essentially just been created to let people start sharing information about where they're playing, how much they're paying, what kind of service and value and conditioning they're getting. Various members of the staff are contributing to Golf. I mean, within the brand, the ongoing struggle, challenge, excitement is about trying to make them all work as, one cohesive body unit with all these organs and bloodstreams, and the cross promotion from morning drive, talking about what I just wrote on Golf Advisor, and then having people go from Golf Advisor to golfchannel.com or golfchannel.com. I think it's if you look at it, it's really overwhelming if you look at it broad base.
Yeah.
But if you look at the individual components and you start to see it work together, it becomes exciting.
Yeah. Ken, you guys have done some fun stuff recently, including with Jimmy Fallon. Why don't you tell us about that?
Yeah, I'll start. One thing that happened was that earlier this year at one of our playoff events, Phil Mickelson knocked a ball into the hospitality area. Always interesting. And he went up there, hit it from there, knocked it within 3 feet. Interestingly, he did it again the next day. And so instead of blowing it off, hiding it, making a thing, we actually went and marked the spot and said Phil was here. That became its own thing. Phil was here again, became another thing. And then our team grabbed that and put out the image of him hitting from the moon, and then asked our fans to start doing that. And we started getting flooded with the Phil was here meme. Guys, showing him hitting off of boats and yachts and from Egypt and from here and there. And really, it's funny. A couple of days, I heard Larry Wilmore of Comedy Central say something a couple of days ago. He said, at some point when you make a show, when you build a property like that, you have to recognize that it doesn't belong to you anymore, no matter how much you think it does. It belongs to them, and they will take it if you don't give it to them. And it was an interesting insight to me, because that's kind of what we try and do in this vein. You can really get people to grab their passion and start sending you their own ideas along these lines. And the number of people who sent us things, it was fascinating. We took those. The nice thing was, all that fun content we packaged together and published, and it built on itself. So that was one. The second was, you can see this is something that we just grabbed and vined. this kid got a ball from Rory McIlroy, and I have never seen a child more excited in my life. It's there on the upper right, and if we had I wish we had the video to run. It's about 20 seconds of him literally jumping and screaming as loud as he can because Rory McIlroy handed him a ball. That was the kind of thing that people just wanted to watch again and again and again. The Jimmy Fallon example was a fun one. Jimmy's a golfer, and we know this, so we have conversation with him from time to time. We've worked with him on EA Sports, and we obviously have a relationship with the game. He did a feature, we didn't know he was going to do it at the time, called, he did a superlatives feature where he grabbed all of our headshots, some of which are, you get the guys at maybe a moment when they said they took the picture, maybe not their best look, and so he grabbed a bunch of those. And Chesson Hadley, at this point, he was a rookie on tour, and most likely to see one of these giant windsocks and say, "Dad?" Chesson is a particularly tall and very thin man. Chesson then grabbed that. Well, the first thing that happened was that within a day, we grabbed Jimmy's high school yearbook photo and tweeted back, most likely to be rejected by the cart girl, which he enjoyed as well, actually. It's kind of I think the fact that somebody talked back to them was, that was fun. Then Chesson went and the next day stopped by the mattress firm, looked up and said, "Dad," to the big thing, posted that on Instagram, tweeted it back at Fallon. Now, the payoff for this, the fun payoff was everybody had a great time with this. It got a lot of traction. Chesson now has, by the way, a $7,000 mattress sitting in his living room because Mattress Firm was so excited about what he did. And it happens to be a Tempur-Pedic, which, by the way, happens to be the official mattress of the PGA Tour, just so you know.
Well
plug.
done.
And that, by the way, has led to a possible discussion of a long-term relationship. Chesson then went on to become Rookie of the Year. And all of that sort of, that is the best example of it weaving together in the way that instead of, we were embarrassed. He could have been embarrassed, and instead he embraced it. And it led to people just loving the guy. And through a national television media all the way through every other personal one-to-one type situation. So
That's great.
May I add one more thing, just expanding on, and everybody's dealing with CEOs and C-level folks. From our end, and I showed our commissioner conducting I think it was a Reddit session. In 2007, every year, sports organizations, sports leagues, at the end of the season, they want to talk about the state of the league, the state of the organization. So in 2007, we bring our commissioner out at the end of the year, and he's at the National Press Club in Washington, D.C., and he conducts a traditional press conference. Fast forward to 2013, and he's doing it at Google's headquarters in New York in a Google chat session, and we have 6 fans up on a screen firing questions at him, and it's just changed dramatically. By the way, we're still looking for ideas for this December for our State of the League, so if anybody has some, send them my way.
Be careful what you ask for.
Good crowd.
Okay, I think we have about 5 minutes left. We want to make sure that we get some questions from the audience if we have any. I believe there's a mic holder, right in the middle of the aisle. So raise your hand if you have a question, and we'll find you.
I have a question that's probably most relevant to Matt, but really to all of you. And you started to talk about the news cycle and how, a press conference 5 years ago. I want to go back to the Tiger Woods debacle, which I think was 2008. Yeah. And I'm sort of wondering, looking back into the crystal ball, looking forward, if that would have happened today, how would it have played out? At the time, it was a bunch of text messages. It was some anecdotal stuff. When Tiger wanted to do his rehab, he got up at a press conference and he posted something on his website. If that would have happened today, how much quickly would the story have cycled? Could it be recovered? Would he have more power to recover? What do you guys think?
Well, it wouldn't have been slower. It wouldn't be slower. Mm-hmm. That's the very safe and guaranteed answer. But again, it goes also back to who is sending out the information and how solid is the information. All of this stuff is happening, like Ray Rice, like Ted Bishop last week, and it's just a matter of does it go away, or does it sort of take on a life of its own? It's dynamic and it's powerful. Both the ones that both the news events that become a life of their own and the ones that don't ever become a life of their own. There's something to be said for both. In the very interesting situation of Ted Bishop, who is president of the PGA of America, sent out a tweet in which he involved himself in a spat between Ian Poulter and Nick Faldo, and essentially at the end of his tweet called Ian Poulter a little girl. And an hour and a half later took the tweet down. 4 days later, he's expunged essentially from being the president of the PGA of America.
Not just fired, but his tenure has been more or less erased from their record.
Which is, we're still being sort of hashed out.
Still working itself out.
But I've also found it pretty interesting that essentially that's been really contained within the world of golf. That there have been a couple blips outside of the world of golf, but that ultimately this has taken on a world of its own, a life of its own, within the world of golf. And just even driving down here, hearing Ted Bishop, first time commenting on it. Ted Bishop saying that is 1/1,000,000th, in a way, of what Tiger's, debacle. But in time now, Tiger, in a sense, has recovered, not as an athlete, but as in a sense as a brand. He's continuing to generate millions and millions of dollars as a brand. I don't even know if I'm really answering your question, other than to say that all of this is fascinating and more importantly, fast.
I'll say if it was 2014 versus 2008, Tiger would have used Snapchat.
There is that, but I also think
He was probably using a form of that. Whisper.
from a league perspective, there's one other little. I think that from a journalist perspective, it would be, if anything, more quickly. From a league perspective, the thing you have to remember too is you can only go as fast in reacting as the people involved want to move. So in Tiger's case, he wanted to think about some things before he went public with them and think long and hard about them. And to some extent, standing in front of a blue drape is the way that people still want to think about things sometimes. They still want to have a formal setting. So sometimes you're limited by, you can offer ideas, you can bring better ways, you can do all that kind of stuff, but sometimes the time's going to take the time it's going to take. And sometimes it's good actually to sort of breathe a little bit and let it go. Sometimes that can make the trolls whip into a frenzy, but sometimes you want to stop and think.
And Tiger himself is really very much of an old school brand. He really isn't embraced social media for various reasons. He uses it selectively, usually to direct people back to his own website for a release of some sort. So I don't know that for Tiger himself, he probably would still do a press conference in front of a blue drape.
Other questions?
This will have to be the very last question.
Okay.
Thanks.
A lot of pressure.
Hello, Tanya Hughes from Talk PR in London again. Slightly building on the last question, actually. You talked then about how you might react to bad behaviour and, perhaps quashing it or moving people on. But what can you do proactively to make sportsmen generally, behave like decent human beings? I mean, for instance, I'll give you an example. No, listen.
I've got all the answers.
That's a tall
Well,
task.
I'll give you a very specific example from the UK. Ched Evans is a footballer, convicted rapist, back on the pitch, and his fans are chanting, Ched Evans, he can do what he likes. Because there is this sort of entitlement to, behaving badly. Or there seems to be a feeling of entitlement to behaving badly. And so, aside from obviously quashing bad behaviour and denigrating it quite rightly, what can you as communicators do to sort of promote decent behaviour, before it even gets bad, if you like?
Can I take this one as a
Yes.
league? As a league, we are, and I'm speaking as the league now. We are lucky enough that our organization is a player association. We are both the union and the league in whatever sense that is, and I can explain more about that if you want to go into a fun game of 501c bingo. But my point is, our players make the rules. They choose a board who chooses a commissioner, and one of the key things that they have in their regulations, their own regulations, is something called conduct unbecoming a member. And if the commissioner decides it's something you have done, and that ranges from spitting on the golf course to all the way as far as you want to go with that, that is brought, and we will address it. The league addresses that very directly with the player. And the players, frankly, the peers, they have no patience for it. And they recognize that, but keep in mind, just as an observation, and this doesn't excuse it, but we are dealing with young men most often with money. That tends to bring its own set of circumstances. We try to put those guardrails in place. And I also feel that I am lucky enough to work in a sport that values decency, at least as much as that is possible. We do believe in certain values.
And I'll add quickly from a much different perspective working in the NBA. You brought up money. I mean, that's the point that we tried to hit on with them very early on. I mean, we would have a business of basketball meeting every year before the season, and we would show them the positive side. If you behave well, look at what you can do with your brand and look at the money you're going to get from endorsements if you present yourself well. But look at the reverse, what can happen if you don't, and look at what that can do to your wallet. We always tried to put things in kind of monetary terms because we knew that's what they would listen to.
I'll be very brief because we're similar to the PGA Tour. We have a no-tolerance policy. Our commissioner can terminate a player's contract if they have conduct unbecoming of the game or the league. In fact, our whole community initiative is called Don't Cross the Line. We have no tolerance for whether it's homophobia, racism, sexism, et cetera. Like other leagues, all of our players go through a very long and detailed and educational session during preseason on how to conduct themselves appropriately, from domestic violence to spitting to you name it.
Guys, thank you very much. This has been great.
Thank you.
We really appreciate it.